Ms. Neelam Kapoor, Mr. R.S. Gujral, Mr. Uday Kumar Verma, friends from the media, especially those who are from outside Delhi. Let me extend a very warm welcome to you to this Conference of National Editors, and I hope you will find this interaction useful. I'm delighted to be amongst you on the occasion of the National Editors Conference organized by the Press Information Bureau. The focus of the conference on economic, infrastructure, and social issues is very timely, given the challenging environment we are in. I thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference and giving me an opportunity to share my views. The role of the media, both print as well as electronic, in building a nation is acknowledged. In today's world of information technology, the media can easily reach into homes situated even in far and remote corners of the country. Media can lead and inspire our youth. Media can orient our youth towards the future of our country in a positive and affirmative way, and that is why the media is called an important pillar of our democracy. As you're aware, the most serious risk to global stability is uncertainty due to the Eurozone crisis. No definitive solution is still in sight. This has impacted investment and growth around the world. No country has been an exception. Obviously, India alone cannot be an exception. Advanced economies are struggling as austerity measures focus at lowering the fiscal deficit and the public debt. This has impacted growth in every country of the world. The emerging economies are affected not only because of a fall in international demand for their products, but also due to a slowdown in major emerging economies like China, a fall in commodity prices, efforts to rebalance demand towards the domestic economy, and an uncertain global environment. The immediate fallout has been a sharp deceleration in global economic growth. The vulnerability of almost all the countries around the world to external shocks has lessons for us as a developing country and for our path of development planning. Countries need to have inbuilt social safety nets in order to face such eventualities, which affect the weak and the vulnerable the most and wipe out the fruits of growth over several years. India, with its focus on inclusive development and timely interventions, has, however, been able to weather the crisis better than most countries. As you're aware, the economy responded strongly to the fiscal and monetary stimulus post-2008 and achieved a growth rate of 8.6% in 2009-10 and 9.3% in 2010-11. However, in 2010-11 and 2011-12, we had to resort to monetary tightening to counter the surge in inflation, even as the external headwinds to growth became stronger. This contributed partly to the deceleration in growth that we witnessed in 2011-12 and that we are witnessing in 2012-13. However, monetary policy action has helped us to rein in inflation to some extent, with the headline WPI inflation registering a significant decline in recent months. I would also like to emphasize that over the past few months, with liberalization of foreign direct investment in certain areas and a number of other steps, we have traveled a considerable distance on the road to economic consolidation and reforms. The need of the hour is to ensure that these reforms are implemented efficiently so that the anticipated upturn in GDP growth is achieved in as short a time as is possible. Reforms are an ongoing process, and far-reaching change have been made in the macroeconomic and sectoral policies since 1991. In recent years, the government has introduced a series of reforms to improve and sustain the investment climate in the country, as well as to make growth more inclusive. These include liberalization of FDI in multi-brand retail, civil aviation, and some sectors of broadcasting, rationalizing diesel and other petroleum prices, including capping of the subsidized LPG cylinders to consumers, introduction of the direct benefit transfer scheme with Aadhaar, introducing the Competition Commission of India Amendment Bill 2012 in Parliament, reducing the rate of withholding tax to enable low-cost foreign borrowing by Indian companies, legislative measures in the banking sector, paving the way for granting of new bank licenses by the RBI, setting up of the Cabinet Committee on Investment for fast-tracking mega projects of over rupees 1,000 crore, approving the scheme for financial restructuring of state distribution companies, DISCOMs, by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Besides these, other reforms are also being contemplated. The Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission that was constituted to examine the laws governing the financial sector submitted its report yesterday, and I have assured all of you that the report will be placed in the public domain in the next few days. The Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation and Resettlement Bill has been cleared by the Cabinet to bring greater clarity, reduce uncertainty, and thereby aid investments. Several fiscal and administrative measures to rein in inflation and steps to reduce the fiscal and current account deficits are also being taken. Here, I would like to emphasize that the two deficits, usually referred to as the twin deficits, are qualitatively different because the financing of these two deficits are through different sources. The fiscal deficit can be financed through internal resources. The current account deficit can be financed only through foreign inflows. And that is why I'm happy to announce a major rationalization of foreign investments in government securities and corporate bonds. As you are aware, and as you will find on page 14 of the brochure that has been circulated to you, the limit for FII investment in G securities and corporate bonds were enhanced by 5 billion each, taking the total limit prescribed for FII investment to US dollars 25 billion in government securities and US dollars 51 billion for corporate bonds. There were a number of subdivisions, and in order to rationalize, it is proposed to merge the existing sublimits and create only two broad categories. One category or one basket will consist of government securities of US dollars 25 billion. This will merge the old government securities and the long-term government securities. Another category, the second basket, will consist of all corporate bonds of US dollars 51 billion. This will merge the US dollar 1 billion for qualified foreign investors, the US dollars 25 billion for FIIs, and US dollars 25 billion for FIIs in long-term infra bonds. Therefore, from effect from 1st of April, there will be two baskets, one of $25 billion US for government securities and one for $51 billion for all corporate bonds. Besides, the current SEBI auction mechanism allocating debt limits for corporate bonds will be replaced by the on-tap system currently in place for infrastructure bonds. Further, in order to allow large investors to plan their investments, government will review the foreign investor limit on corporate bonds when 80% of the current limit is reached. It will also enhance the limit on government bonds as and when needed based on utilization levels, demand from foreign investors, our macroeconomic requirements, and a prudent offshore-onshore balance. However, in order to provide a guide to investors, I'm happy to state that the annual enhancement of the government bond limit will remain within 5% of the gross annual borrowing of the central government, excluding buybacks. As I said, these changes will be operational from April 1, 2013. The budget proposals of 2013-14 have also a number of incentives for investment, which include tax deduction of investment allowance for companies making an investment of over rupees 100 crore in plant and machinery, zero customs duty for plant and machinery for manufacturing electronic semiconductor wafer fabs, and the availability of non-tax benefits to micro, small, and medium enterprises for 3 years after they graduate to a higher category. In an emerging economy like India, rapid economic growth is one of the most important economic objectives. Economic growth, though important, cannot be the only end. It is, in fact, a means to an end. It allows us to generate the resources to achieve more equitable development and a wider distribution of the opportunities that development offers so as to attain higher standards of living for the masses. Equally important is a need for effective bridging of regional, social, and economic disparities and empowerment of the poor and the marginalized, especially women, to make the entire development process more inclusive. The 12th Five-Year Plan subtitle, Faster, More Inclusive and Sustainable Growth, puts the growth debate in the right perspective. The government's targeted policies for the poor with fewer leakages can help in translating higher outlays into better outcomes. Friends, India has the opportunity to grow at a brisk rate for many more years, in fact, for many decades. India is on the brink of a demographic transition with a proportion of the working age population between 15 and 59 years likely to add approximately 63 million new entrants to the working age group between 2011 and 2016, the bulk of whom will be in the relatively younger and productive age group of 20 to 35 years. Given that India is one of the youngest large countries of the world, human development assumes great economic significance. For it, as demographic dividend can be reaped only if this young population is healthy, educated, and skilled. India's productivity and incomes are low, but this again can be a source of opportunity. By giving our people the right skills, tools, and the right jobs, we can increase the value that they add for many years to come. The experience of other countries suggests that the number of people dependent on agriculture needs to shrink over a period of time if the per capita income in agriculture must go up substantially. By moving a part of the workforce out of agriculture to higher productivity sectors such as industry and services, we can have a growth machine that can produce brisk growth for many years, create higher incomes, and improve livelihoods. To make all this happen, we need to create more high productivity jobs. We need to create opportunities in organized manufacturing and in services, even while we improve productivity in agriculture. And I may add that no country has become a middle-income country or a developed country without a strong manufacturing base. We need to build our human capital through the scaling up of vocational training and apprenticeships, which have the power to create a work-ready labor force. We need to skill our labor force. The National Skill Development Council and many of our ministries are working on these fronts, amending the Apprenticeship Act of 1961 and making it more user-friendly can scale up the number of youth acquiring skills through apprenticeship many-fold. Providing adequate protection and minimum safety net for the large number of informal workers is equally important. Programs such as Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana have had a favorable impact on the lives of many, and we're increasing its scope to include many more of the informal sector workers. We need to carefully examine the regulations that govern business so that the costs of entry and exit are reduced. In particular, business should not have the incentive to stay small, and instead, small businesses should be incentivized to grow and create jobs. We need to have the right infrastructure, such as the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which can easily be used by MSMEs with minimal overhead and setup costs. We need to improve the access to finance for small and medium enterprises and have enhanced the funds allocated for these purposes. While the government is persevering on several of these fronts, a lot more needs to be done. I firmly believe that a good job is the best form of inclusion. Creating the right jobs for our people will give us decades of strong and inclusive growth. Despite the limitations in fiscal space, the programs aimed at human development have not been allowed to suffer on account of paucity of funds. This is evident from the fact that as a proportion of the gross domestic product, GDP, expenditure on social services increased from 5.91% in 2007-8 to 6.79% in 2010-11 and further to 7.09% in 2012-13 budget estimates. While expenditure on education as a proportion of GDP has increased from 2.59% in 2007-8 to 3.31% in 2012-13. On health, it has increased from 1.27% in 2007-8 to 1.36% in 2012-13. The central outlay for health in the 12th five-year plan has increased by 200% to rupees 3,18,000 crore compared to the actual outlay of rupees 99,491 crore in the 11th five-year plan. In line with government's commitment to faster, more inclusive and sustainable growth, the Union Budget 2013-14 has earmarked enhanced resources for all major social schemes. Adequate money has been provided to every ministry and every department, and in particular to the flagship programs. The National Food Security Bill is a promise of the UPA government. I am confident that it will be passed soon by Parliament, perhaps in the budget session itself. An amount of rupees 10,000 crore has been set apart over and above the normal provision for food subsidy towards the incremental cost that is likely under the Food Security Act. Friends, we have a collective responsibility to ensure the dignity and safety of women. Recent incidents have cast a long, dark shadow on our liberal and progressive credentials. You are aware the Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2012 has been passed both by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. A fund called the Nirbhaya Fund will be set up with government contribution of Rs 1,000 crore for providing instant relief to the women victims of atrocities. A number of legislative steps have also been taken by our government to guarantee many rights to the people, like the right to information, the right to work through the Manrega, the Forest Rights Act, and the right to education. However, there are also pressing issues like leakages and funds not reaching the targeted beneficiaries. And that is why we have introduced the direct benefit transfer system with a unique number called Aadhaar seeded into the bank account of every beneficiary. The DBT will help in plugging many of the leakages and ensure that money from government schemes reaches the beneficiary on time and the full amount reaches the beneficiary through a bank account. It will also help translate outlays into better outcomes by improving service delivery, accountability, and transparency in the governance of various schemes. It will also accelerate financial inclusion. We have already made a start in 43 districts in phase 1, and we are committed to the time-bound implementation of the DBT system across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached a decisive phase of economic rebuilding, and today we as a nation are more confident in dealing with the global challenges posed from time to time. A resurgent India, having earned its place among major economic powers of the world, confidently looks forward to a brighter future. We are steadily but surely working on the next generation of reforms. The immediate challenge, however, is to consolidate our economy, return to the higher growth path, while ensuring that the gains of economic growth reach more and more people. Let me once again thank the PIB, Ms. Neelam Kapoor, Mr. Verma, and all others on the PIB, and the august gathering here for inviting me to address this conference. Thank you.